of Dyslexia. We're going to be going over The Ethics of Belief by W.K. Clifford, part 2 today. It's long once I broke it up into segments. Here we go. But if my chemist tells me that an atom of oxygen has existed unaltered in weight and at the rate of vibration throughout all time, I have no right to believe this on his authority, for it is a thing which he cannot know without ceasing to be man. He may quite honestly believe that this statement is a fair inference from his experiments, but in that case his judgment is at fault. A very simple consideration of the character of his experiments would show him that they never can lead to the results of such kind, that being themselves only approximate and limited, they cannot give us knowledge which is exact and universal. No eminence of character and genius can give a man authority enough to justify us in believing him when he makes statements implying exact or universal knowledge. Again, an Arctic explorer may tell us that in given latitude and longitude he has experienced such and such degree of cold, and that the sea was of such a depth and the ice of such a character. We should be quite right to believe him in the absence of any stain upon his veracity. It is conceivable that we might, without ceasing to be men, go there and verify his statement. It can be tested by the witness of his companions, and there is adequate ground for supposing that he knows the truth of what he is saying. But if an old whaler tells us that the ice is 300 feet thick all the way up to the pole, we shall not be justified in believing him. For all that the statement may be capable of verification by man, it is certainly not capable of verification by him with any means and appliances which he has possessed, and he must have persuaded himself of the truth of it by some means which does not attach any credit to his testimony. Even if, therefore, the matter is affirmed within the reach of human knowledge, we have no right to accept it upon authority unless it is within the reach of our informant's knowledge. What shall we say of that authority, more venerable and august than any individual witness, the time-honored tradition of the human race? An atmosphere of beliefs and conceptions has been formed by the labors and struggles of our forefathers, which enables us to breathe amid the various and complex circumstances of our lives. It is around and about us and within us. We cannot think except in the forms and processes of thought which it supplies. Is it possible to doubt and to test it? And, if possible, is it right? We shall find no reason to answer that it is not only possible and right, but our bounden duty, that the main purpose of the tradition itself is to supply us with the means of asking questions, of testing and inquiring into things, that if we misuse it and take it as a collection of cut and dried statements to be accepted without further inquiry, we are not only injuring ourselves here, but by refusing to do our part toward the building up of the fabric which shall be inherited by our children, we are tending to cut off ourselves and our race from the human line. Let us first take care to distinguish a kind of tradition which especially requires to be examined and called in question, because it especially shrinks from inquiry. Suppose that a medicine man in Central Africa tells his tribe that a certain powerful medicine in his tent will be propitiated if they kill their cattle, and that the tribe believe him. Whether the medicine was propitiated or not, there are no means by verifying, but the cattle are gone. Still, the belief may be kept up in the tribe that the propitiation has been effected in this way, and in a later generation it will be all the easier for another medicine man to persuade them to act in a similar act. Here, the only reason for the belief is that everybody has believed the thing for so long that it must be true, and yet the belief was founded on fraud and has been propagated by credulity. That man will undoubtedly do right and be a friend of men who shall call it in question and see that there is no evidence for it, help his neighbors to see as he does, and even, if need be, go into the holy tent and break the medicine. The rule which should guide us in such cases is simple and obvious enough, that the aggregate testimony of our neighbors is subject to the same conditions as the testimony of any one of them. Namely, we have no right to believe a thing true because everybody says so, unless there are good grounds for believing that some one person at least has the means of knowing what is true and is speaking the truth so far as he knows it. However, many nations and generations of men are brought into the witness box. They cannot testify of anything which they do not know. Every man who has accepted the statement from somebody else without himself testing and verifying it is out of court. His word is worth nothing at all. And when we get back at least to the true birth and beginning of the statement, two serious questions must be disposed of in regard to him who first made it. Was he mistaken in thinking that he knew about this matter, or was he lying? This last question is unfortunately a very factual and practical one, even to us at this day and in the country. We have no occasion to go to La Salette or to Central Africa, or to lords, for examples of immoral and debasing superstition. It is only too possible for a child to grow up in London surrounded by an atmosphere of beliefs fit only for the savage, which have in our own time been founded in fraud and propagated by credulity. Laying aside then such tradition as it is handed on without testing by successive generations, let us consider that which is truly built up out of the common experience of mankind. This great fabric is for the guidance of our thoughts, and through them of our actions, both in the moral and material world. In the moral world, for example, it gives us the conceptions of right in general, of justice, of truth, of beneficence, and the like. These are givens as conceptions, not as statements or propositions. They answer to certain definite instincts, which are certainly within us, however they came here. That is right to be beneficent is a matter of immediate personal experience, for when a man retires within himself and there finds something wider and more lasting than his solitary personality, which says, I want to do right, as well as I want to do good to man, he can verify by direct observation that one instinct is founded upon and agrees fully with the other. And it is his duty so to verify this and all similar statements. The tradition says also at a definite place and time that such actions are just or true or beneficent. For all such rules, a further inquiry is necessary, since they are sometimes established by an authority other than that of the moral sense founded upon experience. Until recently, the moral tradition of our own country, indeed of all Europe, taught that it was beneficent to give money indiscriminately to beggars. But the questioning of this rule and investigation to it led men to see that true beneficence is that which helps a man to do the work which he is most fitted for, not that which keeps and encourages him in idleness. And that to neglect this distinction in the present is to prepare pauperism and misery for the future. By this testing and discussion, not only has the practice been purified and made more beneficent, but the very conception of beneficence has been made wider and wiser. Now here the great social heirloom consists of two parts: the instinct of beneficence, which makes a certain side of our nature, when predominant, wish to do good to men, and the intellectual conception of beneficence, which we can compare with any proposed course of conduct and ask, is this beneficent or not? By the continual asking and answering of such questions, the conception grows in breadth and distinctness, and the instinct becomes strengthened and purified. It appears, then, that the great use of the conception, the intellectual part of the heirloom, is to enable us to ask questions. That it grows and is kept straight by means of these questions. If we do not use it for that purpose, which we shall gradually lose it altogether, and be left with the mere code of regulations which cannot rightly be called morality at all. Such considerations apply even more obviously and clearly, if possible, to the store of beliefs and conceptions which our fathers have amassed to us in respect of the material world. We are ready to laugh at the rule of thumb of the Australian, who continues to tie his hatchet to the side of the handle, although the Birmingham fitter has made a hole on purpose for him to put the handle in. His people have tied up hatchets so for ages. Who is he that he should set himself up against their wisdom? He has sunk so low that he cannot do what some of them must have done in the far distant past: call in question established usage and invent or learn something better. Yet here in the dim beginning of knowledge, where science and art are one, we find only the same simple rule which applies to the highest and deepest growths of the cosmic tree, to its loftiest flower-tipped branches as well, to the profoundest of its hidden roots. The rule, namely, that what is stored up and handed down to us, rightly used by those who act as the makers acted when they stored it up, those who use it ask further questions, to examine, to investigate, who try honestly and solemnly to find out what is the right way of looking at things and dealing with them. A question rightly asked is already half answered, said Jacobi. We may add that the method of solution is the other half of the answer, and that the actual result counts for nothing by the side of these two. For an example, let us go to the telegraph, where theory and practice, grown each to years of discretion, are marvelously wedded for the fruitful service of men. Ohm found that the strength of an electric current is directly proportional to the strength of a battery which produces it, and inversely as the length of the wire along which it has to travel. This is called Ohm's law, but the result, regarded as the statement is to be believed, is not the valuable part of it. The first half is the question: what revelation holds good between these quantities? So put, the question involves already the conception of strength of current and of strength of battery as quantities to be measured and compared. It hints clearly that these are the things to be attended in the study of electric currents. The second half is the method of investigation, how to measure these quantities, what apparatus are required for the experiment, how are they to be used. The student who begins to learn about electricity is not asked to believe in Ohm's law. He is made to understand the question. He is placed before the apparatus. He is taught to verify it. He learns to do things, not to think how he knows things, to use instruments and to ask questions, not to accept a traditional statement. The question which required a genius to ask it rightly is answered by a tyro. If Ohm's law were suddenly lost and forgotten by all men, while the question method of the solution remained, the result could be rediscovered in an hour. But the result by itself, if known to a people who could not comprehend the value of the question or the means of solving it, would be like a watch in the hands of a savage who could not wind it up, or an iron steamship worked by Spanish engineers. In regards, then, to the sacred tradition of humanity, we learn that it consists not in propositions or statements which are to be accepted and believed on the authority of the tradition, but in questions rightly asked, in conceptions which enable us to ask further questions, and in methods of answering questions. The value of all these things depends on their being tested day by day. The very sacredness of the precious deposit imposes on us the duty and responsibility of testing it, of purifying and enlarging it to the utmost of our power. He who makes use of its results to stifle his own doubts or to hamper the inquiry of others is guilty of a sacrilege which centuries shall never be able to blot out. When the labors and questionings of honest and brave men shall have built up the fabric of known truth to a glory which we in this generation can neither hope for nor imagine, in that pure and holy temple he shall have no part nor lot, but his name and his works shall be cast out into the darkness of oblivion forever. Thank you for being patient and listening through. About 28 minutes right now I have recorded. I'm not sure what it'll get edited down to. Thank you to my editor for editing all this stuff. This guy's long-winded. He's really long-winded. I really don't agree with most of what he says. I think he could have put it a lot more succinctly. You have a lot of patience if you did listen to this. I thank you very sincerely. I thank you very, very much. If you have any questions, if you have any topic requests, feel free to email at libraryofdyslexia@gmail.com. I'm Michael. I'll get back to you on that. And subscribe, comment below, share this with your friends. That's about it. Thank you for your patience. You have a fantastic day.